Well, we're continuing now with the templates for change, nature's laws and harmonies, and this is part 7, which is to do with the law of 12, which is related here to stars, months, and wisdom, as seen by human beings. Now, when we start by thinking about the number 12 and how it comes into the human sphere, and where in our universe it might appear, it does have a remarkable place in our life, and also a remarkable place, of course, from ancient times. Because as humans have looked at the sky, as they did probably far more in ancient times than they do today, where we're living in cities and we only see the sky going light and dark and we hardly see the stars, they would have registered the cycles of the moon far more carefully and thoughtfully than a normal person might do today. And if you do that, you find quite remarkably that the moon has a 12-fold kind of lunar month cycle within 1 year. Now, the lunar month is not exactly the same as our calendar month, and so the moon slips behind the sun, if you like, the 12-fold cycle. But the ancients would have seen that number 12 in the cycle of the moon in the sky as one of the most important cycles of their world. And indeed, even today, some societies run on a lunar month rather than a calendar month. Now, this would have affected all parts of their life, from growing of plants to spiritual understandings about the stars and the universe, of course, because they would have seen this as a principle coming to them from out of the universe. So they would have seen it as a fundamental principle. And on the right hand side, you can see a representation of the 12 lunar months from China. And these come down to us, probably more recent paintings here, but they come down to us from ancient wisdoms of China too. Now, what is fascinating is that having registered this cycle of 12 in the universe, human beings translated that into a spiritual cycle, into a sense of a complete cycle of spiritual process, and also into a complete view of religious and human groupings. So 12 appears throughout the human world. So when we look at how 12 appears from this original sense of it in the sky and with the moon moving around the world, this was then translated into many, many aspects about human beings' view of their daily lives, of the stars, of their planet, and in human design. Now, we know the 12 zodiac constellations in the sky, the 12 astrological types, and the Chinese, interestingly, they also had 12 astrological types, but it wasn't anything to do with the stars, it was to do with the 12-fold changes of months on the planet and astrological years. So they ascribed an astrological sign to a particular year and had 12-year process with 12 different astrological signs. Now, on our months, we obviously have the 12 lunar and planetary months, and that translated into 12 hours in the day and 12 hours in the night. So again, you might say that's to do with the lunar aspect and the solar aspect in our human days and nights. And in traditional medicine, there were 12 Chinese healing meridians. Now, I've also noted here the 12 human cranial nerves, and this is very interesting. So let's just go on to that and have a look at this, because what science has discovered is that this number 12 that is so important to the human in their whole view of their world and the sky And the whole sense that the number 12 is to do with having a complete view, a complete concept of the different kinds of humans, the different kinds of months, the different kinds of spiritual wisdoms. And indeed, our mind, our brain, connects to our body and to the world through 12 cranial nerves. So we do indeed experience our world through 12 different experiential modes and experiential nervous systems in our body. And here's a lovely diagram that shows it. And so you can see that we're getting 12 different kinds of senses through these nerves coming from 12 different parts of our body. So it is entirely unsurprising that, having seen that 12-fold influence physically in the sky with the moon, and then we realize that as humans we're registering our body, our world, and our life through 12 different processes and 12 different cranial processes, that these two have become very important and very interlinked and interwoven. So let's just then move along and have a look at the 12 inhuman spiritual traditions. Now there are many, many examples of this, and I've only chosen a few to give a kind of cross-section from different parts of the world. And in world religions it's considered there are 12 major world religions. And in the ancient world, the classical world, well, there were 12 Greek Olympians, or the 12 Greek gods of Mount Olympus. In Christianity, well, we have the 12 apostles of Jesus. And in Orthodox Christianity, we have the 12 great feasts throughout the year. In Judaism, there are, of course, the 12 tribes of Israel, which were meant to signify the kind of complete perspective of the Jewish peoples. In Islam, we have the 12 Islamic Imams. And in Hinduism, we have the 12 names of Surya in Hinduism. And in Buddhism, we have the 12 devas, or celestial beings. And also in Buddhism, we have the 12 links of dependent origination. So again, that's to do with the religious and spiritual background and understanding to so many of the world's key religions come to completely independently. But it's quite a mystery on the one hand, isn't it? But on the other hand, if you see what we're talking about with the influence of those 12-fold scan of the sky and the movements of the moon, and also those 12-fold experiences that come into our lives through our cranial nerves, and it's perhaps not such a mystery after all. So we can see, can't we, that the cycle of 12 is in an extraordinary way is really quite fundamental to our lives. It marks the passage of time through the day and through the 12 months of the year, and we see it in the stars, and we see it around us in terms of a completion of human cycles of wisdom and personality types and all kinds of other ways in which this appears across the world in spiritual traditions and in our human lives. And it is perhaps not surprising that this is the case. Now, in the natural world, we can see it also in the changing seasons and months that we process through, and we can bring that representation of this 12-fold influence into our own lives in many ways. And here's just one example in the place where I live, where there's a small 12 stone circle designed to represent this cycle of 12, this law of 12, and to bring that connection to the natural cycles and the cycles of the stars and the influences in our human world. Well, okay, well that brings this series to a close, looking at the different laws. But there is just one more presentation I've done, which is to look at how these laws would have appeared in the lives of very ancient man. So there's just one more to do, which I'm going to look forward to doing. And speak again soon, and thank you for listening to this. Bye now.